Grace to you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. Amen. Our text for today is the Gospel just read, taken from St. John chapter 1, the call of Philip and Nathanael. So is the call of God like getting called to the principal's office? Or is it like getting called to dinner? It's kind of a big difference between the two, right? The call to the principal's office is not one that you want to get. It's a sign that you're in trouble and that something is probably not going to go well for you. Call to dinner, on the other hand, well, there's nothing bad about that at all. Suppose you have to get your shoes cleaned before you get in the house, but that call is a good one. Very often, we think of the call of God, the call to discipleship, as one or the other. Either God is calling us and commanding us to do something we don't want to do, or He is calling us to the feast. He's calling us to dinner. It can't be both. And yet, strangely enough, it is. Think for a minute about that call that the young prophet Samuel received. He was a boy, probably about 12 years old, serving in the temple with Eli, the priest. In the middle of the night, he gets this call, and he immediately assumes that Eli wants something. You have to admit, it's kind of a funny scene, I think. 3 times God calls Samuel, and 3 times he assumes that he's up for some kind of work. Here I am. I'm ready to go. Only Eli hadn't called him. Eventually, they figure it out. The 4th try. When you hear the call, Eli says, this time say, speak, Lord, for your servant hears. The problem, though, is that the story doesn't end there. If we were to read on in that story, we would hear that Samuel was called to prophesy that Eli's sons were going to be killed because of Eli's sin. That Eli had not disciplined his sons as he should have. And so they had forgotten their identity as priests and become thieves. Sometimes God's call means turning away from something that you don't want to turn away from. If anything, the call of Philip and Nathanael might be even stranger. Jesus calls Philip and says, follow me. Philip immediately goes and finds Nathaniel, and Nathaniel essentially says to him, can any good thing come out of Stockton? Nazareth, I guess. Nathaniel is suspicious of Jesus. He does not think that Jesus is anything special, has anything that they would want. Philip says, come and see. You'll have to decide for yourself. When Nathaniel and Philip come to Jesus, Jesus says, behold, an Israelite indeed, in whom there is no deceit, there is no lying. Nathaniel says, how do you know me? Before you saw me, I saw you while you were under the fig tree. Nathaniel goes on to say, my Lord and my God. Calls him Rabbi. You can almost imagine Jesus rolling his eyes and saying, well, Nathaniel, you're going to see something better than me seeing you under a tree. That's not actually that great. What you're going to see, Nathaniel, is the heavens open and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man. You are going to see far greater things than these. Of course, what did Nathaniel have to give up in order to get to that place? Well, only his life. That's all he had to give up. Discipleship, following Jesus, means walking as he would have us walk. It means recognizing that the things of this world are trying to pull you away from the path. They're trying to pull you away from the call of God. The call that leads to that place where we will see the angels ascending and descending on the Son of Man. This is what St. Paul talks about a little bit in Corinthians, when he essentially says to the Corinthians, you're not getting this connection between what it means to be a Christian and what it means to live. Their problem was sexual immorality. That's something we know a little bit about in our culture today, isn't it? The world around us would have us follow a very different path, many darker paths. But each one of us are tempted in our own way to follow our own path, or to follow the path of darkness and not the path that leads to God. God's calling, however, continues. But we might ask this question that Nathaniel asked, how do you know me? How do you know what I need, Lord? Well, the answer is in creation. O Lord, you searched me and you know me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from afar. God is the one who made you. And not only the one who made you, he is the one who came into your very flesh and blood in the person of Jesus Christ. And so he knows you, not just sitting under a tree. He knows you through and through because he's taken on your own flesh and blood. Now what that means is following the path of Jesus doesn't mean just following along blindly. It means knowing that this goes from death to life. It means turning away from sin. It means dying. Dying in your baptism. It means living in him. Today, as we reflect on what it means to be a disciple, to follow our Lord, he calls you out of darkness into his marvelous light. He calls you, listen to my word and follow me. He calls you to trust in him because he knows who you are and your every need, from the least to the greatest. He calls you in faith, and he calls you to know that you will see the heavens open and the angels of God ascending and descending. That you too will get the final call, the call to the dinner table, the eternal banquet of the Lord, of which we get a foretaste this day. So come, receive his gifts, hear his word, trust in his promises, for he has made them all for you. In Jesus' name. And now the peace of God, which passes all understanding, keep your hearts and minds in true faith till life everlasting.